Hello, my name is Ashley Davis Bush, and I'm the author of the book Transcending Loss, published under the name Ashley Davis Prend in 1997. I wanted to share a few ideas with you about grief over time and what happens through the years for grievers. The first point I'd like to make is the concept that there is no closure. A lot of times people will look for closure either at the end of the funeral or when you take your wedding ring off if you're a widow, or if you clear out the room of the person you loved. Closure is a sort of mistaken idea. It's a myth, and it sets people up for a lot of heartache, because the truth is there is no closure in the sense of a business deal or a real estate transaction where it's just all over and done with. That's not the goal, because what happens over time is that you discover that grieving is really a lifelong process. Now, that doesn't mean that the acute pain you feel in the first few months or even the first year is going to be with you forever. It just means that the love and the impact of the loss is something that's now woven into who you are. And so to be looking for closure is a setup for heartache, because you are still going to miss them, you are still going to think about them, and you should. And that's the second point I want to make, which is what I call synthesis. And the concept of synthesis is embracing the fact that this loss and the love is part of who you are through time. And in my book, Transcending Loss, I break that down into 4 categories. And the first one is retriggering. Retriggering just means that no matter how many years go by, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 30 years, there are going to be times that are just hard, where you just miss them, where you're thinking about them and you're longing for contact with them. And that's okay. That's okay. I have people come to me many, many years later and they say, I still cry on their birthday, or I still cry on our wedding anniversary. And I just assure them that that's very normal. It's okay, and it's part of the process of synthesis. Another aspect of synthesis is connection, and that is that all losses unconsciously are connected. So you may have a loss of your grandfather when you're an adult, and it reminds you of a loss that you had when you were a child, maybe of a pet. Or if you have a husband die, it may remind you of a loss that you had when you were a young adult, of a grandparent dying. That unconsciously they're all connected, so a new loss can re-trigger again aspects of previous losses, and that's again very normal. Another aspect of synthesis is what I call memory, which is that it's okay and in fact desirable to keep the memories alive of your loved one. You don't want to forget them. You don't want to pretend that they didn't exist on this planet. You want to celebrate them and remember them and honor them with your love. The last part of synthesis I'd like to mention is dialogue, that it's okay and in fact is important to continue dialoguing with the person you loved who's no longer here. You can write letters to them in the form of journals. You can have rituals honoring them every year. You can look at their pictures. You can have memorial services for them. It's important to continue the dialogue because the relationship itself is still alive, and over time that deepens and enriches itself. The last point, the third point I'd like to make today with you is about the concept of transcendence. Now, this is really critical because 2 things tend to happen over time. Some people get very bogged down in their grief. No matter how many years go by, they stop savoring life. They shut their heart down. They become bitter. They become just sort of angry, suffering people. And other people take this other path that I call transcendence, which is that they use their loss as a springboard for growth and new compassion and an enriched appreciation for all of life. That can be very exciting. It doesn't mean that the loss itself isn't painful. It just means that this person, this kind of griever, has made an intentional decision to turn their grief into something meaningful and productive. And I talk quite a bit about that in my book, Transcending Loss. In particular, 4 avenues that transcenders typically fall into, which I use under the acronym of SOAR, S-O-A-R, for spirituality, outreach, attitude, and reinvestment. And I'll be doing another video on those particular aspects coming up. But that's just to give you a brushstroke of some of the ways that people use their loss to change. They use it as a catalyst to really embrace life and re-engage in life in a new way. So those are some of the ways that grief changes over time. It doesn't mean that you won't continue to miss them and even hurt very deeply from time to time, but you weave the loss into your life, you weave the love into your life, you can use it as a springboard for growth, and that's what can happen with grief over time. For more information and resources, check out my website, which is www.ashleydavisbush.com, and I wish you well in the process of grieving over time.